Nyquist. Nyquist has taken the lead on the outside. Gunrunner, second at the rail. 5 lengths back to Destin in third. And they come to the final furlong. Exaggerator is closing in. Nyquist to catch with a 16th to go. Gunrunner, Exaggerator on the outside. Nyquist and Exaggerator, they're coming to the line together. And Nyquist is still unbeaten. He has won the Kentucky Derby.
Welcome back to another edition of A Case for Racing Immortality here on the Racing Rundown. Today we'll be discussing Doug O'Neill, one of the most successful young trainers of the 21st century so far. A lot of big accolades for him. And we'll get started at the beginning of his career. He actually trained for 10 years from 1989 to 1999 with a very small amount of runners, only running about 10 to 15 horses for the first part of his career. Late 90s, business started to kind of pick up, but then in 2000, he finally kind of made it onto the scene, winning 3 graded stakes early on in his career, one of which came with the talented Skyjack, who was probably Doug O'Neill's first big horse, actually his first Grade 1 winner, winning in 2002 the Hollywood Gold Cup. Doug O'Neill himself said probably the horse that he thinks was one of the best in his barn that gets so little respect nowadays because he suffered a couple injuries that prevented him from getting to the top level of racing like a Breeders' Cup, which Doug would have liked to have won with this horse. A couple graded stakes wins here and there, about 5 or 6 in 2003 and 2004. And then in 2005, he won his very first Breeders' Cup race, sending out Stevie Wonderboy with Garrett Gomez aboard. A big win, and that horse was his first Breeders' Cup winner in his first, not his first year running a Breeders' Cup horse, but probably his first real big shot in a Breeders' Cup race. 2006, he won again with Thor's Echo, a very talented sprinter, giving him a second in 2 years. Quite impressive there for Doug. All while this was happening, though, neither of those horses were the best in his barn. Lava Man, probably one of the best horses Southern California has ever seen, was Doug O'Neill's first breakout superstar horse, his first of a couple horses of a lifetime. Earned $5 million in his career and did it the hard way, a $35,000 claimer who would now go on to win multiple Grade 1s, the Hollywood Gold Cup, the Santa Anita Handicap. The unfortunate thing about Lava Man is he hated running outside of California. He could do just about anything in California, could win going a mile on the grass, going a mile and a quarter on the dirt. He did it all, and he did it for a long time, I might add, running all the way from his 2-year-old year in 2003 to 2009 when he finally called it quits. But anytime he shipped out of California, Lava Man was not very talented. The Breeders' Cup in 2006, when he was one of the favorites, didn't really run well. 2005, he shipped to Belmont to prep for the Jockey Club Gold Cup at Belmont for the Belmont Breeders' Cup. Ran horribly, went to Japan, ran horribly, went to Dubai, ran horribly. Nothing ever worked for him when he left California. But when he was in California, that horse was on his game, winning a lot of big races for Doug O'Neill. In 2007, he finally got his first Kentucky Derby horse, and he doubled it that year. He ran 2 in Great Hunter, a Grade 1 winner at 2, and for a second, looked like the winner of the Breeders' Cup Juvenile the year prior, as well as Liquidity. Neither of those horses won, but they both ran very well. Doug had a couple more Breeders' Cup and Kentucky Derby horses, none really breaking through. All while this was happening, though, in 2005, I should say, he finally started training horses for Paul Redham, who to this day is his primary client, gives him a lot of good horses year in and year out. And when Redham jumped on, Doug O'Neill's career took it to a whole nother level than the high level he was already on. Those 2 first Kentucky Derby horses were run for Paul Redham. 2007, he also added another Breeders' Cup win, making it 3 years in a row when he won the inaugural running of the Filly and Mare Sprint with Merrifield, the talented female sprinter. A lot more Breeders' Cup wins in this time, or not Breeders' Cup wins, graded stakes wins in this time. A lot of Breeders' Cup runners. A bunch of long shots, though, that never really were able to break through. Doug continued to enjoy success, and then in 2012 is really when he I wouldn't say he made it because he had already made it, but I think this is when he finally had it made as he won his first Kentucky Derby with I'll Have Another, a bit of a long shot who came into the year kind of unknown, a horse that they thought was a second level horse, the general public, not the connections. A Kentucky Derby win, a Preakness win, and then when prepping for the Belmont, was unfortunately injured and knocked out for the rest of the year. But he still enjoyed a successful year outside of that, including the fall meeting his next big star, Golden Sense. Won the Delta Downs jackpot. I believe he was second in the Champaign before that. Was one of the favorites for the Kentucky Derby, as Doug O'Neill won his second straight Santa Anita Derby. Ran horribly in the Kentucky Derby because he was not a mile and a quarter horse, but then that fall would win the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, the fourth of Doug's 5 Breeders' Cup wins. 2014 was a rough year for Doug O'Neill. He unfortunately faced a suspension, which I'm going to touch on in a little bit, a suspension that knocked him out for a good part of the year. He was the trainer of Golden Sense, but when he was suspended, he had to be run under Leandro Mora, his assistant's name. So he did win that race, but unfortunately, it was not under Doug O'Neill's name. Nevertheless, a year later, 2015, he was back and he met another very talented horse. Actually, won both premier one-turn juvenile races at the end of the Del Mar and Saratoga meet. I don't have the exact stat on it, but he has to be in a very elite group of trainers to win the Del Mar Futurity and the Hopeful in the same year. I highly doubt there's actually another person out there that's completed that double. He did it with Nyquist and Rallis, and later that fall, both would run in the Breeders' Cup. Nyquist would win the Juvenile. That would carry on to the next year in 2016, when Nyquist would go on to win the Kentucky Derby in impressive fashion, an undefeated winner of the Kentucky Derby at that. Unfortunately, kind of faltered after that in his career, but nevertheless, a Kentucky Derby win, giving Doug 2 in just 5 years, both for Paul Redham, also sending out talented fillies in that time. From that point on, we haven't seen another elite Doug O'Neill runner. He's won graded stakes here and there. He's very prevalent in all the big graded stakes in California, whether it's a long shot or a odds-on favorite. He's going to have a runner in a California graded stakes race. And that's something that is kind of notable about his relationship with Paul Redham. Neither one of them afraid to take chances in the big races, including shipping all the way to Dubai to run a long shot and maybe pick up a piece of the purse there, like he did with Pavel, who was actually his last Grade 1 win in 2018. But by no means is Doug O'Neill done, although he has had a couple kind of, not, I wouldn't say rough years, but no notable runners, breakthrough runners that would, be remembered 20 years on from now, but nevertheless, solid horses in his barn. Doug O'Neill's a young trainer. In the grand scheme of things, he has a lot more that he's going to do in his lifetime as a trainer. I believe he's a Hall of Famer even this year. 2 Kentucky Derby wins, 5 Breeders' Cups, and probably a lot more to add on. And he's done it with a lot of talented horses. I think even though there might be horses that maybe weren't considered great horses, I'll throw out an example. IRAF won the 2017 Bluegrass as a maiden. It just kind of shows what Doug O'Neill's able to do with some of these horses that kind of begin their careers a little rough. He's able to turn them into superstars, doing it seemingly the right way. So I believe Doug O'Neill's a Hall of Famer. I think his resume would suggest the same thing. It's up to the voters, but I think even if he doesn't get in this year, you'll see him in there at some point, because what he's achieved to this point has just been quite incredible. So that's it for this edition of A Case for Racing Immortality on Doug O'Neill. I'm Eric DeCoster, and we'll see you next time.
Seek Gold is 8 behind, and they run to the top of the stretch. Magnum's at the rail. Lava Man is alongside in second. Ace Blue's actually back into the bid. He's only a length and a half from the front. Super Frolic is next, and Lava Man and Magnum come to the final furlong, and Magnum has lost the lead to Lava Man. Lava Man is ahead in front. Magnum is battling on bravely and coming back. Ace Blue's only a length from Lava Man. Lava Man has the lead. He's put away Magnum, but Ace Blue is charging. Lava Man, Ace Blue, right together!